Hello everyone, my name's Chris and welcome to Mithral Brews. This is a content creation video in which I am going to help you create something you've already purchased. Maybe you have it on Roll20, maybe you have it on D&D Beyond, you have the printed book, and you're wanting to bring that over to Foundry, but you don't want to use importers that might not pull everything over correctly. It's just as easy for you to cut and paste some things, and that is what we're going to show in these videos. If you've a subscriber of mine and if you've been watching along with these videos, I think I might have gotten down to exactly how I want to run these videos. If you're brand new, sit back and enjoy learning how to use this. And if you're new to Foundry, hopefully this will get you started on creating your own content or bringing your own content over from one of those other resources that I just mentioned. Now, this is not content that is created. I think it's exclusively going to only be on D&D Beyond. And that's kind of what I've been focusing on, is helping build more content in my 2024 game rules. I've now moved to 2024 only, so I don't use any 2014 rules or game, I guess content like monsters or subclasses, any of those for my players. I only use 2014 stuff. I only use the 24 rules. I'm going to be building these anyways, and I thought I'd start doing these videos. So I think this is my 4th or 5th video building a subclass for you. I am looking at building more videos on different types of content, but specifically right now I'm sticking to the subclass because I do have some new games coming up, and I want to make sure I have a few more subclasses based on what some players have told me they'd be interested in. Now this one is a really easy one. This is the path of the Spiritual Guardian-Barbarian Subclass. This is probably by far the easiest subclass that I've made. It only has 4 features, 3rd, 6th, 10th, and 14th level. And it is pretty much the Ancestral Guardian. I think this is just an upgrade from the Xanathar's Guide to Everything, Path of the Ancestral Guardian. This is just the 2024 version. They renamed it to Path of the Spiritual Guardian. Let's jump into how I created this, and then we'll go through each of the subclass features and how I made those. So I always like to start with making sure I have everything in a personal module that I created, and I always create one for all my content. I created this one called Character Options, and it is different. In my previous videos, I usually use this one called Player Brews. I decided to change the way I kind of set it up, and I set it up like the Heroes of Faerun book when I got that. And if you haven't gotten this is really awesome. It's going to give you, I think, about 9 more subclasses, maybe not 9, 8 more subclasses. But it looks like they were able to just pretty much put all character options into one folder, and that I had been doing it in 2 folders. So I like the way they laid this out, and I decided, well, you know what, I'm going to start copying that. And so you'll see the other subclasses I've already made: the Hexblade Patron, the Necromancer, the Oathbreaker, and now I have the Path of the Spiritual Guardian. Once you have it in this personal module, you can then share it to every world. So if you have multiple worlds, you run different games, you don't have to worry about, you have access to it. All your players, you have different groups of players, they all have access to the same content. I always build in a homebrew world, or I create a world that I create all my content in, and no players are actually part of it. And that way, once I get it into these modules, the players have access to it, and I don't have to worry about them messing up anything because they just have access to put it onto their character sheets. So the Path of the Spiritual Guardian. Let's pop this open. Let's look at what the actual subclass is, because that's the first thing I do. So I have a folder for subclasses. Create a folder, and then I will create the subclass. So I just do create item, and one of the items here, this is going to be subclass, which is right here. And the Path of the Spiritual Guardian, all it is copy and paste the description over. That's pretty basic. Then under details, I just made the identifier Spiritual Guardian. Class identifier, of course, is Barbarian, and then there's no spell progression. Under advancement, I made the 4 advancements. So there's one at 3rd, 6th, 10th, and 14th. And all I did is click this button here, do grant items. And when you do grant items, you just want to change the title to subclass features. You can copy and paste that so it goes quicker, then choose whichever level you want to add them, and just do that 4 times. That's the first step. That's all you have to do. You don't do anything else, because now you need to start making the actual features. You can make a folder. And so this time I made a folder, a path, the Spiritual Guardian, and then I put parentheses Barbarian. Again, I got that idea. It's not original. I took it from this, the way they set up the subclass in the new Heroes of Faerun book. I don't make the subclass features in the character options first. I will start it on a test actor and then build it on the test actor. Once I have it built on the test actor, then I move it over to the folders. So let's look at a test actor. Now, all of the actors, I had been previously creating my own actors and going through all the work of setting them up. All you gotta do is grab the actors. If you have the player's handbook, you can just grab the actors right here and use the example characters. Silly me, didn't really think about just using those for my test players. If you don't have the player's handbook, the modern content does have a few actors, but I don't think they have characters. Yeah, so they don't have any kind of characters. So you could use the legacy content, which has starter heroes. The problem is these are all set up with the older version of, let's say, Barbarian. So you don't get a great example if you're making 2024 content. At that point, you probably have to make your own actors. But if you have the player's handbook, just use the ones that are in the player's handbook. And then what I do is I bring the character level up to 14, because the path of the Spiritual Guardian has 3rd, 6th, 10, and 14 levels where they get advancements from the subclass. So I'll just bring it up to 14th. I won't even add a subclass yet, because I'm just testing the features as I'm building them. So you'll see here, if you do that, you just click here, you choose feature. When you hit feature, it throws it in this other feature. So it's kind of nice little separation in case you get lost or you have to stop and come back to it later. And then I'll just make the 4 subclass items. I won't even change names. I won't make any updates to them. I'll just add 4 of these new items. And from there, I'll go to the first one and I'll just do edit, and I will build out that first item. So you cut and paste the description from whatever source you have. So of course this was the Unearthed Arcana PDF. I brought it over. I guess made the text pretty by making sure it's all formatted correctly. Then I put in the name, of course. I put in the name of the subclass. This is a new thing I started doing, again, looking at how the Foundry team had already been doing on theirs. I decided to copy that. And I'm not going to take credit for anything that I do. I literally just try to copy what's already done, because I think the Foundry team and the way they've set this all up and the devs for that have done a great job, and might as well copy what's already there and just make the changes that I need for my specific subclasses. Then of course I grabbed an item or icon to put in there, and I start going through. So let's go through the spiritual protectors, and we'll do this one at a time, because that process is the same process for all 4 of these. So at this point, we might as well go through and start testing how each of these features work. So spiritual protectors, you'll see that it has, what's nice is it really kind of explains that you're going to need at least 3 activities, possibly a few effects, and that's easy to get from the description. Under details, you're going to make sure to make the type class feature and then put the required levels 3. If you need to, you can add uses here in the details. And we don't need to on this one, because it's basically it has 3 effects that the barbarian can use while they're raging. If they hit with a weapon or unarmed strike while they are raging, they can choose one of these 3 effects to happen. And so it doesn't have any kind of item use. I did create 3 activities, and of the 3 activities, I actually made 2 effects. So let's look at the activities and effect. The first they can choose from, if they hit with a weapon or unarmed strike while raging, is they can distract the target. And when they distract the target will have disadvantage against any other target other than the barbarian or another barbarian that has this same feature. So really, that's just a use activity. Anytime you see this little wrench, that's a use activity. You choose this one right here. And we go through and we set up how would they use this activity, right? So they would, of course, rename it. You would rename it, and then you're going to set the time as special. So this is a special situation. It doesn't cost anything. It only happens though while the barbarian rage is active and when they hit with a weapon or unarmed strike. It has nothing that's consuming to do this, and its range, of course, is special because the barbarian could throw, let's say, a javelin, and then that would trigger this spiritual protector. So its range would be equal to the weapon, and it can only happen to one creature. The effect that I created was the distract effect. Now, there is nothing in Foundry in the current system that applies disadvantage to another creature's attack, let alone disadvantage to another creature's attack only if they attack another actor other than the barbarian. There's a lot of if then that situations that the system is not really designed to be that detailed. So you do got to rely on the player and the DM to consider things, and that's all I did with the effect is I just made it a mark that you would put on to a creature. So let's real quick throw these three actors into combat, and we're going to move down to the barbarian's turn. And on the barbarian's turn, they're going to perform this action, and this action is going to put an effect on the dragon to remind the dungeon master that creature has this distract effect on it. And what did we do? We basically typed in and pasted in the description of what the distract is and changed the adjectives around a little bit. So instead of it saying until the start of your next turn, we say until the start of the barbarian's next turn, you have disadvantage on attack rolls against targets other than them or another barbarian with the spiritual protector's feature. We set a duration of 1 round because it only lasts until the start of the barbarian's next turn. And then there's nothing to really add here again because you can't create disadvantage on attacks just yet in the system. And it's not disadvantage on all attacks, it's disadvantage on attacks against creatures other than a barbarian. And I don't foresee there ever being a way for that to happen outside of someone making a module that somehow can evaluate those different situations. I'm happy with where the development's gone so far. I don't think that's necessary. We're going to show how that works. So if the spiritual protector, we won't go through all the details of whether the barbarian hit the ancient deep dragon or not. We're just going to say they did, and they're going to use this distract feature. At that point, they're going to select they've targeted the ancient deep dragon, and we're going to apply that effect to the ancient deep dragon. That's it. That's all that piece of the feature does. The ancient deep dragon then has this little marker on it that says, oh, there's an effect on the ancient deep dragon. I did a video on a couple of modules that I prefer to use, and that is called the Visual Active Effects and the Times Up module. Those modules help me have these little displays, this little UI display up into the top right corner here that allows me, the DM, to click on and read what does that effect do. So if you like that I can do this, that's called Visual Active Effects and Times Up. And Times Up will keep track of the expiration of this feature, for instance. So you'll see that in action here in a moment. If I'm the DM, it's the barbarian's turn. The barbarian added that effect. It moves to the fighter's turn. Now it's the deep dragon's turn. If I go to the deep dragon and go, well, what is that effect it has on it? Oh, that's right. I have disadvantage on any attack rolls against targets other than that barbarian that I'm fighting against. I'm going to attack the barbarian, or let's say I still want to attack the fighter. Well, that time I'm going to have disadvantage. That's just something I have to actually play out by holding whether I want to do fast rolls with the control in the attack, or when I make the attacks, I select disadvantage. At the end of this one's turn, I'm going to move and it's going to disappear because it's going to start the barbarian's turn now. Let's move the barbarian down in initiative. That's crazy that all of them rolled the same initiative. I didn't even realize that. So let's bring the barbarian's initiative down to 15. And we're going to do the same thing just to make sure everything is working correctly. He's going to hit. He's going to drop the distract on there. And then we're going to go to the dragon. Dragon's going to go, and you see that the dragon still has that effect on there because it's the fighter's turn. And then at the start of the barbarian's turn, it falls off. And that's because I set the duration to 1 round, and it's 1 round from when the barbarian applies the effect, and then it expires automatically because of the time's up module. That's pretty much the distract feature. Now, if you think about it, that's going to be the same as the protect feature. The protect feature has that it specifically says until the target's next turn, the next time it hits a creature other than you with an attack roll, that creature has resistance to the damage dealt by the attack. There's not much that you can do about that other than just throw another effect, I guess status effect symbol on the enemy, and then as the DM you'll have to review what that does. And so all I did is duplicate the distract feature, which is another use item, make change the name to protect. Everything else is the same. It's special. It's while you're raging, when you hit with a weapon or unarmed strike. There's no consumption. The targeting's going to be the same, but the effect is going to be a little bit different. So all I did here, of course, is cut and paste the description and then make some changes so it looks like it's coming, it's described from the enemy's point of view. And the duration, I didn't put a duration because you just as the DM got to remember that it is removed the next time the creature, other than next time you attack a creature other than the barbarian. It's not an end of a turn effect or a start of a turn effect. It does last until the end of that target's turn, but it also only affects the next time it hits a creature other than the barbarian with the attack roll. So if the creature has 3 attacks, it only affects the first attack. Changes. You could create another feature that adds resistance to the creature's target. So if the barbarian and the fighter if the fighter was the target of the creature after the barbarian applied the effect, you could set up a different activity that would apply the effect that gives the fighter resistance to all the different types of damage. And honestly, it's not worth the effort to do that. You're better off just, again, remembering it. And so what you would do is on the barbarian's turn, they make that attack. We're going to do the protect effect. We're going to apply that to the dragon. And now when we move to the dragon's turn, you see that they have this effect on it. You as the DM, it's not unlimited. It's just until the creature makes a first attack on another enemy other than the barbarian. You know that because you have the description right here. And so if that's the description, now you're the barbarian. So let's get some of this out of the way so I can pull up the Deep Dragon's attacks. If I make an attack and I make this rend attack, and we're just going to roll the damage for it. We're not going to actually... And then I roll the damage, but let's target the fighter. Because I know that the fighter is not the barbarian and the Deep Dragon just hit the fighter, so we would select the fighter. And then it would do half damage and apply. And so it'd only do 11 damage on that original 25 damage. I think there was some resistance there. But that's how you would do it. Then at the end of that, well, after it makes that attack, then you would just remove the effect and now carry on like normal. So that's how it basically would have to work. The last effect here, if we take a look at it, is really just a damage carryover that when the barbarian attacks and hits, it's just going to do an extra 1d6 damage of these 5 different types: acid, cold, fire, lightning, force, and thunder damage. So all you have to do is do a damage activity, go to strike, make some changes. Again, it's a special action consumption. Targeting is special. It's whatever the weapon is. And then all you do is make a 1/1 die 6 and then put it the damage types. And that's pretty easy. And then all you do is after the barbarian attacks, you hit the strike button and it rolls the 1 die 6. So he would do additional 2 points of damage. Now, if you want to, I'm going to show you a little bonus trick here. Is under your weapons, once the barbarian would get that feature, you could set up on each of their weapons an extra attack activity that's called Spiritual Strike. All you do is duplicate the original attack. Then under the effect, you just added another damage type. So right here, the damage type. And you then add your 1 die 6 and add your different options. And that way when they make their strike with that, and we're just going to say they hit, when they do the damage, you'll see it does the 1d4 for the dagger, and then there's the additional damage for the strike feature, and you can change the type of damage here and roll it. And there you go. All said and done. So our next feature is called Spiritual Shield, and they get this at 6th level. Let's take a look at how I set this up. This one is a reaction feature. So do this on a reaction. It has a range of 30 feet. And it basically says when the barbarian sees another creature take damage within 30 feet, he can take, or they can take, a reaction to reduce that damage by the number of d6s equal to the rage damage bonus and add them together. Let's just go through it. Details, class feature, level 6. There's no limited use. They can just do this as a reaction. There is an activity. Now I created 2 different activities that you could choose to set it up as. I'll leave that up to you which one you would want to do. By most of the examples that the Foundry dev team uses to represent this type of thing where it reduces the amount of damage the creature would normally take, they usually always do a heal activity. That's right here. That's a heal activity. The other option would be to make a use activity. And I'm going to show you both. So let's start with the use activity. That's the way I would prefer to do it, rather than apply the damage to your ally or the creature that the barbarian's trying to protect and then healing them. I would much rather just do the calculation and manually do the damage. So for instance, I set this up as a use activity. Its activation is a reaction, and then I just put in there like what is the reaction. There's no consumption. The target is a creature up to 30 feet. And the effect, if you see here, is just a roll formula. I just want a roll formula to pop up in the chat card when the barbarian uses this feature. Now, to get the right formula for this feature, it's the number of d6 is equal to the rage damage bonus. To find out what the rage damage bonus formula is, you would go up to the barbarian class. If you click here on the barbarian class and look under advancement, you would see rage damage bonus here. So at 1st level, the rage damage bonus is 2. At 9th level, it goes up to 3. And I think it increases one more time at 4 here. Maybe that's the highest. Yeah. What is the formula for that? If you click here and go to edit advancement, you will see right here, it tells you this is the identifier that will tell Foundry what the formula value or what the value is. So you just copy this and you paste it into the roll formula, and then you put parentheses around it and this put D6. So that's it. That's how you calculate that. So let's see that in action real quick. Dragon, attacks fighter, right? We already did that, but let's just roll some damage here. Dragon attacks the fighter, right? And does 26 points of damage. Because the fighter's got some resistance, they're going to do 21 points of damage. Barbarian reacts. We use this spirit shield. It pops up. Oh, I'm going to use this as my reaction. Here's a description of what it does. And then you roll, and it rolls 3d6. So as you see there, it does 3, and there's the value. It does 3d6. Now you subtract that 10, and so instead of doing 21 damage, you would just manually say, well, it does 11 damage. You just minus 11 on that. That's going to be the easiest way of doing it. It's a little bit of math, and you just manually reduce that. The way that the Foundry team typically does this, or the devs that create most of the content, they do this. They will do a heal activity, and this works just as well. I find doing it this way works better, but let's show you that. We're going to have... I'm going to roll the damage first here. Gets 18 points of damage from the Deep Dragon. I'm going to go to Spirit Shield, and I'm going to show you the heal activity. It's pretty much the same as the use activity. Activation is all going to be the same, targeting consumption. The effect, the only difference is it uses it normally would set up like this. You just go click use formula, and you use the exact same formula that I used in the other one. I go and I grab that formula from the Barbarian class advancement. Then I put in parentheses and I put the D6, and then I say type healing. And how that will work is that now they're reacting. They're going to use their spirit shield. They're going to roll their 3d6. So as you see there, it caught the Barbarian's Rage's 3 damage points. So it means this is 3d6. And now it's going to do 9. So I would, if I was a Deep Dragon, I would then, if I was the DM, I would do 18 points of damage. And then, this guy's now going to heal 9 points of damage. This actually works well, maybe even better than the other version when you're at higher levels and your monsters are doing pretty high damage. Most of the time you don't have to worry about. But if this was a lowly goblin and they only did 3 points of damage and you rolled 9, now you're doing math again to compensate for the over heal, because you can't heal more damage than it reduces. Either way works. I'll let you choose, but I wanted to demonstrate both of them. Now let's look at the 10th level feature, the Path of the Spiritual Guardian, and it is called Consult the Spirits. Now this one is really just an activity or an action. Of course, copy the description over, but the couple things that I did differently is I did link the UUIDs to the 2 spells that you can cast from, so that the player, one that's on their character sheet, they can hover over and say, well, which one do I want to use? The description here, this is the description for the clairvoyance, and they can make that choice before using the activity. Details, of course, class feature, level 10, but if you read the description, it does say that you can't use this feature until you finish a short or long rest. So under details, what I did is I set it up so it has a limited use of 1 and it recovers on a short rest. Selecting just short rest means that it will also recover on a long rest. That's pretty much the details page. Under activities, all I had to do is now once I created this description, and from the sheet I just drag and drop the spells into the activities, because it could do one or the other. The only thing you have to do from there is open up the activity, change the activation and the consumption to item uses 1 in this item. By default, it says activity uses. You go to item uses, and then it'll default to this item if you have it on a character sheet. If not, it'll just be a blank. And then target, of course, is their themselves. And then you don't really change anything about the spell other than you just change the casting ability. It'll be default spell casting. The description of this specifically says it uses wisdom, so you choose wisdom. And you do that for both spells. You don't, I don't need to really show it, but we'll go ahead and look at clairvoyance. Same thing, activation, this item use 1, and then the spell tab, I just changed to wisdom. Now clairvoyance has a feature built into it. So if you look at the spell, it itself has an activity that summons a invisible sensor. The description of this spell says it, instead of an invisible sensor, it summons one of your guardian spirits. it's not worth changing anything. If you want to go that extra mile, you could make a non-player character actor that is pretty much the invisible sensor. You just duplicate this and then change the image, I guess, and that will work. But I didn't go that far. Not necessary. And how that would, any of these would work, now that it's on the character sheet, short rest, I would say augury. I'd cast that spell, and right here's the description for the DM and the player to read if they need to know anything. Let's do a quick short rest. They get the use back, and they can cast now clairvoyance, and then it says, hey, do you want to place a summon? Yep, there's your summon, and there's your invisible sensor. Or like I said, if you change it to a guardian spirit, then it would show up there. That's it. That's all there is to this feature. Our last feature is vengeful spirits. This one is, there's not really much to it. If we look at the item, it essentially says if you roll a 18, 19, or 20, the barbarian then gets to make an additional attack roll with the same weapon that they used as part of that action. And then it says once you use this feature, you can't do it again until the start of your next turn. That's it. It just gives you an extra attack if you roll one of these. Details, of course, would be class feature 14. Now, if you are really picky about, and I don't want to say picky, if you really want to make sure that you're keeping track of uses on this, you could set the limited uses to 1 and you say start of turn. And when basically the barbarian hits, they roll a 19, let's say, or 18, 19, or 20. They attack, they roll their damage, and they say, oh, I get another attack. So they would go and use this feature, and it would empty the resource, so they can't use it again. They'd make this extra attack, and then whatever other attacks they would have, because I think barbarians by that point would have 2 or 3 extra attacks. At the end of their turn, if you go through the encounter tracker here, you will see at the start of their next turn, it replenishes. And that's it. That's the vengeful spirits. All right, so once you've got that all tested, you have it all on your test actor here, and it's all working correctly, and you're like, okay, cool. That worked. Then you take your features and you drag them over to your folder in your compendium folder called character options for me. You bring them over there, and from there you can start deleting them. The reason why you do that is because now we're going to just test to make sure they all appear in our on the barbarian when we add the subclass. But before we do that, we need to open up our subclass, go back to advancement, edit the advancement, and drag and drop the features on the right level of advancement. So in this case, spiritual protectors at 3, spirit shield at 6, consult the spirits at 10, and vengeful spirits at 14. That's it. Your subclass is done. Let's just test it. We go here. We're going to add the subclass feature right there. And then it goes through the advancement, says, hey, you're level 14. You just now added this subclass, and we need to make sure you know what you get. So level 3, you get spirit protectors. Level 6, you get spirit shield. Level 10, you get consult the spirits. And level 14, you get vengeful spirits. There we go. It's done. We go down here. Look, there they are. They're all working good. If you wanted to, you could then test them again to make sure everything's working good. The only thing that I would normally test to make sure it consumes the right thing is, I do believe, consult this. Yeah, I would go into consult the spirits and go, does it know that it should be using this item? So I would edit, go to activities, make sure that the activation is consuming this item. Yes. Because if you look at over here, it's just blank, and in light letters there, it says this item. So I just always check stuff like that, make sure it's consuming the right thing. Outside of that, that's done. That's the path of the Spiritual Guardians Barbarian subclass. So if you like this video, let me know. Give me a thumbs up. Make a comment if you have some ideas or you have a subclass you would like to see me make. Eventually, I'll probably hit most of the Unearthed Arcana. Again, I'm using those to build out the content for my world. I realized I had the College of the Moon Bard. I think I made a video on that too. And then they went and put it out in the Heroes of Faerun book. So that happens. I expect that to happen. But there might be third-party content that I haven't thought of. I kind of stick to just the Wizards of the Coast stuff right now, and so that's what I'm using. If, like I said, you have any ideas of other things you would like me to build, magic items, species, backgrounds, if you feel like the videos I've done so far, you would like a little more detail on something different than what I've made, let me know in the comments. I like to usually do whatever my viewers suggest. I like to try to produce those as soon as I can. Give me a subscribe if you want to see more of my content, and when I put it out, I'm trying to up my game here a little bit, get a few more videos. I got some stuff that I'm working on and planning, so if you want to be notified of when those come out, make sure that you subscribe to the channel. Until then, may all your brews be tasty. Thank you.